vengeance. I am the Knight. I am Batman!
Batman, a genius, a master tactician, a millionaire, and also one of the coolest superheroes ever made. He's basically Kaiba on steroids, but you know what he doesn't have? The title King of Games. Because the only way you can get this is by winning Pegasus's Yugioh tournament. Can he do it? Can Bruce Wayne beat Yugi and Pegasus? Can he overcome the powers of the Millennium Items? What does his deck look like? And most important of all, how does the Dark Knight achieve such an incredible feat? That is exactly what is covered in this video, so stay tuned to find out. Also, I want to remind everyone to like and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. It really helps me out a lot. Before I get into what Batman would do, I just want to explain the rules and format of Duelist Kingdom for anyone who doesn't remember. If you already know about this, skip to the timestamp shown on screen. Duelist Kingdom is a tournament that was created by Pegasus, and its winner is granted the title King of Games. Each contestant gets a dueling gauntlet and 2 starships. In the first part of the tournament, it is a battle royale and contestants can duel each other and bet as many starships as they would like. The winner then takes all the starships that the loser bet. The first 4 people to gather 10 starships then get to battle it out in a tournament, with the winner going up against Maximilian Pegasus. Let's start with Batman. Getting into the tournament wouldn't be difficult for him at all, even if he did not get an invitation. But let's say he does get his gloves and starships the same way everyone else does. Now, let's set the stage for Bruce Wayne, aka Batman.
I'm Batman.
Batman is a cautious superhero, relying not on pure strength, but rather his unparalleled strategic genius to beat his foe. So before any fight, he would research his opponents and come up with a strategy to annihilate them. He even goes as far as to come up with a plan to beat every single member of the Justice League, his allies, in the case someone betrays them.
None of us would ever do that to you. Then you're damn fools.
And if you want a real example of his genius, one time Batman was stranded on the freaking moon and he came up with a plan to get back to Earth almost instantly by using the boosters of his destroyed ship as well as the oxygen tank, all while regulating his breath and only using the booster in a way that doesn't kill him. So he's not only a smart tactician, but he can also think on his feet, both of which are great attributes when it comes to Yugioh. That is what Batman can do, but what can't he do? Batman, in our case, would not have any of his high-tech gear that he usually carries, and is basically just Bruce Wayne. He wins this by defeating Pegasus, fair and square, while all the others are allowed to use whatever they usually use. So Yugi can use the Millennium Puzzle and Pegasus can use the Millennium Eye. Let's start at the very beginning of the arc. Yugi and his gang are all on the ship that takes the 40 duelists onto the island. And while all the others are going around talking, Batman would already start gathering data on everyone on the ship. He would keep a keen eye on Yugi because of the Millennium Puzzle, and then he would survey the ship and find Bakura, who wasn't invited but still tries to get on the boat. He wouldn't interfere with the event itself by exposing him, but he would keep the encounter in the back of his mind. After arriving on the island, Batman would meticulously pick his opponents, avoiding the ones that could lead to him losing. I think we can all agree that he would make it to the final tournament arc pretty easily, so I'm not even going to try and argue this point too much. He would just avoid Yugi and Bakura at all costs and challenge those duelists he can win rather easily against. We don't know enough about most of the cast in this arc, other than that there are 40 of them. We get to know about 20 in the show, so that's all we know. This is a bit of a downplay for Batman, since I would guess he would know every single card of every deck as well as every duelist's background. So let's start the bracket for the tournament. One of the 4 people gets replaced by Batman, and I think no one would be mad if I say that Batman would be a better duelist than Joey, even though he did beat Keith, but only by using cards from his opponent twice. Also, Joey's deck is super RNG reliant with Time Wizard, and that just wouldn't make for good content. So our first matchup at this point is Keith versus Batman, and suffice to say, this is a hard one. Batman loves nothing more than justice. It is basically his whole reason for existing, and he strives to make people change. And Keith sounds like someone who needs some change. As the ex-American champion, he went into a downward spiral after losing the title and became addicted to drugs, gambling and winning, even if that means he must cheat. Sounds like the perfect match for Batman. Batman would of course know Keith's backstory, since he would already know what the top contenders for the final tournament are and would research them in advance. He would be ready if Keith ever tried to cheat and keep an eye on Keith's hand as they dueled. Once Batman is in a winning position, Keith tries to pull some cards out of his sleeve. Batman would catch this instantly and call him out on it. Pegasus would then have to end the duel and disqualify Keith, declaring Batman the winner. If you look at the bracket, the next matchup is a real nail-biter. Batman vs Yugioh. This arc happens very early on in the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, so we don't know a lot about Yugi's, or rather Pharaoh Atem's powers yet. But he still has some of them. Also, I already covered the powers of all the Millennium Items in my last video, so go watch that if you want an in-depth look at those. But here's a quick rundown of the Millennium Puzzle's powers. It grants its owner incredible skill at strategy, as well as increasing the luck of the person wearing it. I know, weird item. But what does the Pharaoh have in terms of power? For that, I want to look at his greatest feat, beating Zorg, the literal god of evil, who seeks nothing more than to destroy all life. In ancient Egypt, Atem sealed himself, as well as Zorg, into the Millennium Puzzle, but Zorg managed to seal a fragment of his soul into the Millennium Ring. He was then resurrected again by King Bakura and had to be fought off once again, which is one of the last battles in the original Yu-Gi-Oh manga. Atem summons all 3 Egyptian gods, but that still wasn't enough to defeat Zorg. Kaiba then summoned all 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons and fused them to create Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, and then fused himself, the Pharaoh, as well as Blue Eyes to create Master of Dragon Soldier. But that still was not enough. Only after the Pharaoh learned his true name, Atem, he fused all 3 Egyptian gods and created the ultimate god, which finally ended Zorg's destruction. So Atem beat the literal god of darkness, albeit be it with some help. But at this point in time, Yugi does not have the 3 god cards yet, and he doesn't know his true name. So in terms of power, Batman has definitely had weaker opponents. But can he beat him fair and square? Let's look at the duel. To even begin arguing this point, we have to address the elephant in the room. What deck would Batman play when entering such an event? Just so you know, this event has a special rule set, which is as follows. Each player begins their duel with 2000 life points. Direct attacking their opponent is not allowed. Only 1 monster is allowed to declare an attack per turn. Players can normal summon monsters of any level without tributing. If a player fails to summon any monster during that turn, when they did not control one, they will automatically lose the battle. When a monster is destroyed by card effect, the controller of that card takes damage equal to half of that monster's attack. With that in mind, let's see what Batman would have in his deck. As already stated before, Batman is a genius when it comes to strategy. And quite frankly, he has to be to fight alongside superheroes such as Superman. Especially this last rule is quite interesting. A lot of the monsters in this arc are high attack monsters, so playing a lot of destruction cards such as Mirror Force and Fissure are definitely in his deck. I would say that he does not play any trick cards such as magical heads or steel cards such as Grave Robber, since they would be too inconsistent. Since you do not have to tribute monsters, high attack is king, but not for Batman. No. He would play a lot of high defense monsters and use the effect damage rule to win, while simultaneously trying to chip at his opponent's life points by making his opponent attack into his monsters, thinking they are weak. Batman can contain any situation and keep casualties to a minimum, and this would fit right into his no killing rule. He would also have some burn cards somewhere in his deck to get the win. His monsters have high defense and low attack, which also makes him immune to the same rule he is trying to abuse. Since you can only attack with 1 monster per turn, a defensive wall would just be the right choice to make. I can't really go card by card for his deck, but that's the general strategy. So how does that compare to Yugi's deck? Yugi does play some pretty beefy monsters, although nothing too insane, with Black Magician and Summoned Skull being the highest in terms of attack. What does make this interesting though are Yugi's spell cards. He plays Dark Hole and Breath of Light, which could potentially one-shot Batman on the spot. But what makes this a clear-cut case is not by looking at the cards that work well, but by looking at the cards that don't work at all. Mirror Force, Kuribo, Swords of Revealing Light, Magical Heads, and the list goes on. So many cards of Yugi's deck would just not be relevant at all in this duel, since Batman would never attack and Yugi would struggle to do anything relevant. Batman would just keep his important cards for any threat that Yugi might have in terms of attack, and strategically dismantle Yugi, one monster after the other. While Yu-Gi-Oh is a game with a lot of RNG, it is mostly about putting RNG in your favor. And that is exactly what Batman does in this scenario. I can't argue that Batman would win 100% of the time just because of the nature of Yu-Gi-Oh! But I can say with a very high certainty that Batman would win against Yugimoto and proceed to go into the actual finals of the tournament. And that brings us to Batman versus Pegasus. Alright, so this is the final battle of this arc, and Pegasus has a massive advantage from the start, the Millennium Eye. He can read the mind of Batman throughout the duel and know every card that is in his hand. Again, if you want a more detailed look at the Millennium Eye, you can look at my previous video. How can one normal guy beat Pegasus's mind scan ability? And what I'm about to tell you is absolutely wild. Batman would legitimately be able to resist Pegasus's mind control. Batman, not one, but on multiple occasions, has resisted mind control and telepathic abilities much stronger than those of Pegasus. In JLA Classified issue number 45, Martian Manhunter's brother had the entire Earth under his mind control, and the only ones who resisted this were Batman and Martian Manhunter himself. Sure, you can argue that might be because of his advanced tech suit, but here's another one to really drive home this point. At one instance, the Lump wanted to steal Batman's memories, but Batman also resisted that. So the villain had to take over Alfred's body to get Batman to give him his memories willingly. But you know what he wasn't wearing at that point? That's right, his Batsuit. So through sheer willpower alone, Batman can resist Pegasus's mind scan ability. And not only is this very plausible, but it literally happened when Yugi was fighting Pegasus in the Shadow game. Pegasus could not read Yugi's mind because his willpower was too strong. What does make this battle quite interesting is the final boss, as you may call it, Sacrifice, since it can just suck up all of his monsters. So how would our genius superhero deal with this oh so strong card? Well, there's really only one option he can choose to take the title King of Games, and that is to use one of his spell cards to destroy said monster. But what if he did not have that? Well, Yugi is an RNG game, but Batman is also no fool. Despite cards like Toon World, Batman would already know about Sacrifice. He would anticipate Pegasus playing it and keep a card that specifically destroys Sacrifice. And since his whole deck is based around depleting his opponent's life points by destroying monsters this way, this is a pretty fair conclusion to reach. Pegasus would have to admit defeat and declare Bruce Wayne as the new King of Games. And that is how Batman would take down Battle City and become the best duelist in the world. If you made it to the end, I want to thank you for watching and remind you again to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, leave a comment if you think I'm correct or if you disagree. I love talking to you guys in the comments. And with that, have a good one. Peace.